What's up, everybody? Hello, hello. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody had a good holiday break. I know I sure did. It was nice. For those that are not new to my channel, I've tried doing something like this a few different times as far as a super deep dive into the lore via streaming and all that kind of stuff, rather than just sitting here pumping out lore videos and doing it by myself. I still want to continue doing those things, but it's a lot more fun to engage and to put out something a little more kind of free balling and much more engaging. So the lore videos will still, I'm actually in the process of making one right now, but some of these, some of this playthrough will be live, some of it will be pre-recorded, all that kind of stuff. But the goal is to tell the story that we've kind of already been telling it through the lens of psychology and kind of the hidden narrative that is behind the veil and underneath the surface of Elden Ring. And for those that are new to my channel, you're probably going to want to start with some of the lore videos to get a better understanding of what the hell I'm even talking about. But I think to kick us off, we need to all get on the same page with the concepts of Jungian psychology and how they apply. You have to excuse me, I'm just getting out of a cold, so that's the perks of being a father to a 2-year-old. You're just constantly sick. But understanding the concepts put forth by Jung, and then also applying them to the game, and how we can use that to move forward and get a better understanding of the story being told, and then also what to expect in the DLC, because I think it's becoming more and more clear that the DLC is going to be more about America's personal shadow. It's going to be all about death. It's going to be the death realm, something that she has long repressed for various reasons. But I actually got all my shit together today, so I have. If you guys are interested and you guys want to kind of follow along, I have this book, The Anatomy of the Psyche, Alchemical Symbolism and Psychotherapy. That's a real page turner. The Aeon Lectures, which, if you're interested in Jung, this one is probably one of the best ones to just get an understanding of, the different concepts that we'll be talking about today. It's like all about the ego, the persona, the shadow, all that kind of stuff. The Mystery of the Quiuntio, which is all about psychology, and the Rosarium pictures, and then the Mysterium lectures, also all about alchemy and the individuation process. Another really cool thing that I've been reading is this PDF. It's actually a it's a thesis for somebody who's trying to get the doctorate in psychology, and it's all about how alchemy and the individuation process, it's explaining those two things from a bunch of different vantage points. So it's a really cool source. But I think to get us started here, let's just go very quickly through the concepts and how we can apply these to endgame. So first, what's in the background here is Jung's model of the psyche. So above the ripples, it's the consciousness, it's the ego, the persona, and then basically society. Below the ripples is the shadow, the personal unconscious, the collective unconscious, the anima animus, and the self. And then the lands between is this whole thing kind of put onto the screen. So lands in between, above the surface, you know, we see the Erd Tree, we see America, we see the golden rays of society, the greater will, all this different type of stuff. And then once we dive into the depths and we go below the surface, we find the Omen, and we find the ancestral followers, we find the Nox, and we find Estelle, and we find the Fingerslayer blade, and that is all the unconscious. But the thing here is that it's not America's personal unconscious, it's the collective unconscious from a societal standpoint of how we got to where we got. When talking about the ego, the different concepts of... So each concept is shown through various ways in Elden Ring. So... And America's going through different stages of development. So these different children, they represent the same thing, just in different stages. So when we think of the ego, and when I say ego, it's illustrated by America, it's illustrated by the Erd Tree, it's illustrated by Godwin. All these different things are representative of the ego. Things that are like a pillar in the community that shine bright and that is deemed acceptable and wanted by not only the person but also society. And to just take a step back, America is the subject, right? So she is... all of this is taking place within America's psyche. So America is the subject. So she's in each of these different layers, which is why America pops up in so many different characters and elements of the story, is because it's played out from her point of view, right? Like, everything that's happening is happening through her lens and within her psyche. The best way that I can explain this, because this is a really difficult thing for people to understand, is when we think of alchemy, and we think of the Philosopher's Stone and the process of that, and not only the process of that, but also the different pictures that go with it, everything that we're seeing, everything that's happening is happening within the alchemist's flask. So the pictures and the story playing out, right, and the thousands of books and all this shit, it's all happening within one flask. It's all happening to one stone, right? It's just that stone is going through different processes to make it into the Philosopher's Stone. And that's kind of the whole point, is that you start with the stone and you end with the stone, but that stone has gone through so many different processes that it's now like this metaphysical, magical stone. And what the flask is to the alchemist, America is to psychology, or America is to the game of Elden Ring. So America is the vessel that all of this is happening in. And just like alchemy has all of these crazy pictures, you know, these pictures are just brought to life because it's the process that's happening within the flask. And that's how the game is being told to us, is through these different events in the world of the lands between. But in reality, just like this is happening in one flask in the laboratory of an alchemist, it's happening inside America, which is why America is just kind of this husk of a person that we never actually see, and why she is brought to us through all these various contextual clues and different characters in games, because it's all happening within this one vessel that is America. I hope that didn't confuse the shit out of some people. So the other big concept is the shadow, and the shadow is America's personal shadow, and we know that America's personal shadow is only dealt with or only is focused on death. So there's something about in her life, that death she wanted sealed away because of some sort of traumatic experience. So when we're talking about the shadow, although yes, Malekith is the shadow of America, think of the shadow as like this bank vault that the real thing that it's hiding is what's inside of that vault. That's the same thing that's happening with Malekith. He's hiding destined death. He's hiding the Glowmite Queen. And that is the shadow of America. And the shadow, if left completely unattached from the ego and repressed for so long, will seep its way into the consciousness. It will make itself known, whether you like it or not. It's not going away. So the longer you repress it, and the more energy that you use to repress it, the blacker and denser that it gets. So Malekith, the reason that Malekith is so damn huge and ferocious is because America, for a very, very, very long time, has been repressing this aspect of herself and has tucked it away and hid it not only in space but also in time, and it's locked away and it's growing more and more ferocious as time goes. And we see this concept of shadow come to life in a lot of different aspects, really. Like we see it with Moog, we see it with the Knight of the Black Knives, we see it with the Glowmite Queen. All of these different aspects are America's shadow side that are basically trying to stop her ego from ruling the roost, basically. From a psychology standpoint, the shadow is supposed to be the counterbalance of the ego. So it's supposed to, when the ego gets way, out of touch with reality and thinks it can do whatever it wants to, the shadow is supposed to knock it back down to reality. And when you repress your shadow, the ego just goes wild, and it becomes, in Carl Jung's verbiage, it becomes godlike, and it thinks itself a god because it has nothing to push against it. So every decision that it makes, it thinks it's right. Everything it does, it thinks it's like this holy doctrine that it's, that everything that it's doing is godlike, which is why the Glowmite Queen is known to be able to kill gods, because the shadow does just that. So when the ego gets out of touch with reality and becomes basically somebody that's like a narcissist, the shadow is supposed to be able to knock that person back down to the ground, to reality, and be like, oh fuck, maybe I'm not that great after all. So all these things that we see where this happens over and over and over again is the shadow taking hold of the ego getting out of control. And then, since America is the subject, she's also the anima. So if it's a female subject, they are the anima. If it's a male subject, they are the animus. But in a female subject lives this more masculine part of her called the animus. And the animus goes through different developmental stages as the subject grows and develops too. If you haven't, check out my lore video about the Elden Lords, because it talks about this. So just as America grows and develops and goes through stages of life, so too does her animus, which is shown and brought to the screen by the Elden Lords. Now, an important thing that I left out of that video is that the Animus is usually characterized and personified by somebody close to the subject. So usually the first stage of the Animus is, although they all have the same characteristics and traits, it's usually personified by like the father, because that's kind of the stage that the subject Marika is in at that point. She's a young girl, and really the only male figure in her life is her father. So usually that Animus is portrayed by her father. So my guess is Godfrey, the what he looks like, maybe not like how gigantic and muscular he is, but like his structure probably looks very similar to Marika's real life father. And then Radigan looks identical, with the exception of the hair, to Godwin. And Godwin being the son, right, of Marika. So she's now starting that phase of her life where she's starting to think about having children, and this is the image that comes to her mind. And then we, because we are a character, we create our own thing, we're just the next iteration of that. So when we think about the Animus, we're talking about the Elden Lords and the people who have potential to become the Elden Lords. And then the very crux, the very center of one's psyche is the self. And the self is the totality of all of these different concepts within one whole united individual. The self, in psychological terms, is the Philosopher's Stone. It is like the end goal. It is the lapis. It is the elixir of life. It's all of these different things that, through the process of individuation, you start to re-assimilate all of these things in your psyche into one whole being. So the ego, which you can see in Melna, is her golden eye. The shadow, which is the purple eye, and the death. The anima and animus is brought to life by her hair. It's gold, strawberry blonde, which is Radigan and Marika together. It is the totality of all of these different things. It's also, the self is also akin to the crucible, the one great, the great tree, where there is no division of life, right? There is, everything is harbored within it. It's only when consciousness, ego consciousness, arises out of the self that these splits and divisions and fractures occur. And you can see that with that top left image, as far as the Elden Ring image at Fair Missoula, compared to what we see, you know, like on the cover art of the game, where it's, you can see it here, it's just poking out of the surface of the self, making her ego grow. But ultimately, the cycle of the alchemical rebus and the Philosopher's Stone it's a never-ending thing. You're constantly working on yourself, you're constantly working on these things. So it's over and over that this process happens. And one really interesting thing to note is that the image of a dragon and the alchemical kind of illustrations is associated with the Ouroboros, and it's the serpent eating its tail, and it's to think about the process of individuation in the magnum opus as circular rather than linear, as like once you kind of figure something out, like it happens again, and you're every time the cycle occurs, you're constantly making the stone and the self that much more whole, that much more strong, that much more godlike. And the dragon being representative of that Ouroboros, of the process that never ends, really, is super fitting because where this statue occurs is in Fair Missoula, which is the domain of the dragons. And for this to be the beginning and the end of the journey back to the self, and basically, once we reach ourself, we start this process back over where we grow and develop our ego again until it gets separated, and then we need to start the process again. And it's just this constantly, and that is my guess why the capital is covered in ash at any particular time, is because this process just continues to happen, and you're always taken back to Fair Missoula, and you're always like, they're setting the Earth Tree on fire, burning it back down, combining the ego and the self to make a godlike creature, Melina, and then it starts over again. And the last thing about the self is that it's called your inner god. So any other god in game is an outer god, whether it's the greater will, the formless mother, chaos, any of that stuff. It's all outer gods because it's not coming from within ourselves. And then the collective unconscious we kind of talked about is anytime that we're going kind of deep under a well and we see the Nox, the eternal cities, we see the ancestral followers, all of this different stuff is basically telling us the story in a linear way of how we got to where we got to collectively. And then the greater will, the two fingers, all this different type of stuff is societal acceptance, basically. It's the things that we do to gain acceptance from our peers, from everything outside of us, whether that is in harmony with ourself or not. So the greater will being all about order and faith and, you know, following a certain way of life and banishing out other things, is kind of society and consciousness come together. So whenever we think the greater will, think of like America's consciousness as a whole, as she's trying to appease society, and think of society as this singular entity, as a god that we're trying to appease, and we're trying to, you know, look as good as possible in the eyes of this god. So that was a lot, but it's really, really important to gain that level of understanding before we dive into it. Oh, what's up, Altos? Love it. Show me the doll where the shadow touched you. Never. You'll never know. I'll show you. Quick question: what do you think about the outer god of Twinbird and its connection to Fair Missoula? I think we're gonna find that. I think we're gonna find that out in the DLC. So the Twinbird, and we'll get to this when we get to Fair Missoula. But another thing that I should bring up here is that the secret of the golden flower, and basically what it's talking about there is you have to have two forces pushing against each other, two opposite forces pushing against each other for life to persist. So I think that is because we see the Twinbird in Fair Missoula, and in the middle, it's two opposite things, and in the middle of it is a singular flower. So I think that is about the ego and the shadow, the two Twinbirds, one of life, one of death, pushing against each other, forming an existence, basically. how the Phoenix of Duality, Twinbird, as representation of how Mikola is going to revive Godwin by giving him a true death and resurrection via the solar eclipse. Phoenix rising from his ashes. Did Ronnie ignore her shadow? Blight seems rather small and weak compared to Malekith. Yeah. So... child, strong man, young adult, sex man, prideful, unchecked ego, don't need no man. That's right. That's actually really good. So an important thing to remember is that the shadow doesn't necessarily have to be negative qualities. It just has to be its antithesis to what your ego is searching for. So Ronnie is very much about nihilism and kind of oblivion and kind of the end of life, really. When she talks about it's a journey that she needs to do alone, and we walk into a black hole basically, and America disappears, like that to me is very. And no, okay, let me step back here for a second, because Carl Jung also says that in the face of trauma, when you're going through this rebirth process, kind of like what Antos is talking about, and you're going through psychological dismemberment because what you've known and loved and cherished is not working for you, and you're putting the pieces back together. Some people never get out of that. And Carl Jung said that this is, like, alchemically, this, if you never get out of it, is called lead-inness, where it's that in game is associated with the dark moon. And lead-inness is suicide, where it's like this blackness, this nothingness, and it just kind of perpetuates you into giving up and into everything that is not living. So the things in Blide are the opposite of that. So he's friendly, he's like very much he's very loyal, he's kind of part of like the world. You see him interacting with things around him, all these different things. So he, and because he's in service to Ronnie, right, and they have an interaction together, they're still in union with one another. It's just that his qualities are much more positive than Malekith's and Marika's shadow, which is why Blide is much smaller and much more gentle compared to Malekith. Okay. Now that we have that out of the way, and is there, before I start, does anybody have like any groundwork kind of ideas or questions before we get going? There. Okay. Let's see here. What do you think the Misbegotten are? I think the Misbegotten are they are creatures of the Crucible who represent the repressed, downtrodden, unconscious realm of society. Yeah, it's a Spider-Man. Came to the right spot. So, Misbegotten and Omen are synonymous. They are just different ways to tell the story. They're things that represent the self, they're things that represent the unconscious, the crucible where there is no division in life, which is, in the past, was a really good thing before this ego-centric society and consciousness grew out of the self. Also, music is loud. Like in-game music? Or my own music? Um, does Grace actually save a wretch such as the class that can be chosen? Yeah, why wouldn't it? You can look into it and see. Could say they are misbegotten even. Hey yo. Okay. I'm curious why. Is there something about a wretch that? I mean, because in their starting class they have the memory of lost grace as well. So in honor of my homie Carl Jung, this guy's name is going to be Carl. A poor, purposeless sod, naked as the day they were born. A church spy adept at covert operations, equally adept with swords. They are the incantations. Studied in glintstone sorcery, having lived among the elite prior to sentencing. Distant land of reeds. We'll do Wretch. We'll do Wretch. Fuck it. Think I'm scared? The gold of grace shining in the eyes of people of the lands between, using to gain many runes. Make him fat and bald like Carl. Okay. Oh man, I hate that though. I always do mine super skinny. I like the Bloodborne like aesthetics to me. Are well then if we're gonna do that, then we might as well make him old. Oh god. Look at that. Oh, he's got liver spots on him. Carl. Okay. I'm not fucking around with that. We'll make him bald. Oh, jeez Louise. Eyebrows are good. Oh, that's even better. facial hair. We'll give him a big old beard. Or just maybe just this. Oh, baby. Now we're talking. Okay. Wait, does he? Do we have? Okay. Eyes. We're gonna give him. Some purple eyes. The Targaryen. No. Should we give him an eye patch? Like a pirate. Sure. Oh, God, I hate that. Mic is poo. My mic is? God damn it. Like too quiet or what? Is that better? Check, check, check. Yeah. Hey, don't be mean to Mike. Mike's not poo. Okay, I'm going Yarnum. We'll keep him weird looking, but he's in desperate need of the healing blood. No. All right, Carl. Let's go. Okay, Mike's better. Just a bit quiet. Cool. Thanks, y'all. And here we go. So since we've all seen this probably a million times, I'm gonna be annoying and talk through it. So just as that picture of the model of psychology, where it's the ripples and above it is the conscious, like think of that when you're looking at this picture. And then notice Marika, what she's wearing, what color it is. She's very much in a state of like mourning. Isn't it weird that Radon would be getting his ass kicked by Morgott? Oh, Fecal Feaster. That's a great... Wow. Should have named that instead of Carl.
Rise now, ye tarnished, ye dead who yet live. The call of long-lost grace speaks to us.
Another big thing of mine is notice Marika's hair in the different statues that we see. So there she had just one braid on one side of her head.
Lorethrough, chieftain of the Badlands. The ever-brilliant Goldmask. Fear, the deathbed companion. The loathsome dung-eater. And Sir Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing. And one other, whom grace would again bless. The tarnished of no renown. Cross the fold to the lands between.
Carl, let's go. You dirty. God, he's a handsome devil.
To stand before.
If I looked like that when I was, I don't know, I'm gonna assume he's 65 or 70, I would be fucking pumped.
And become the Elden Lord.
Smith Bob asks, so did America shadow the Elden Ring to try to get Godwin back, or literally just because Godwin died? So, I think that the shattering of the Elden Ring, right, is played out via the Night of the Black Knives. So, in other words, when we see Marika shattering the Elden Ring, what is happening is that she is shattering her inner world, right? It's a term called psychological dismemberment. Think of it as like your car engine. Like you're hearing a rattle, something's not right. It breaks down, and you have to take that thing apart, and you have to find the piece that's broken, and then you have to fix the broken piece. But you look out, and the only way to do that is to take everything apart, and then you're trying to put these pieces back together. So the shattering, right, is the same event as the shattering of the Elden Ring is the same event as the Night of the Black Knives. So it's just that in that moment, the first process of either it's in alchemy or it's in the psychology and individuation. Alchemy is known as the Negredo, and then individuation is known as the Dark Night of the Soul. And it's this ego, it's an ego death that is taking place, where your ego that has gotten out of control or is no longer serving you because something traumatic happened in your life, something is broken in your life, you are sacrificing that ego, right? You're basically just bringing it back into harmony with the rest of your psyche. Let me see if I can find something in here that will make a little bit more. Come on. Um, in this kind of thesis that I'm reading, connecting alchemy and individuation, one of the highlighted quotes was, "There will be moments when the death we face may turn out to be a symbolic one, heralding an alchemical process of mortificatio and putreficatio, which can lead to a renewal and the opening to a deepened symbolic life." Um, Another another way is when life doesn't conform to such ideas, the innocent or immature ego is wounded and often overcome with feelings of hurt, self-pity, anger, oppression, and feeling victimized. The darkening process can lead to a kind of blindness and dangerous stasis of the soul. Uh, it becomes fixed and locked in a wound. From an alchemical point of view, these innocent attitudes resist undergoing a mortificatio process, and as the inevitable experiences of life cause wounding, the soul enters the darkening process. Sorry, there's one specific one that I'm trying to find. Um, Here's another, in this paragraph, the author is talking about the death of the ego and what it turns into. It was a brilliant sun with a dense black center and long fibrous tentacles, which is kind of what we see in what Godwin has turned into. Um, but, anywho. Um, yes. Psychology and Alchemy by Carl Jung. There's a bunch of different things that I'm referencing. That's it. um, so you're saying Night of the Black Knives and the Shattering happen simultaneously? That's like when I picture it, that's kind of the process that happens. Is the just like in alchemy, like we talked about earlier, the each stage is brought to life by like a bunch of really intense, elusive pictures. I think the Shattering, the picture that's drawn from the Shattering in a symbolic way is the Night of the Black Knives. Um, and once I get a I'm not chickening out. I could definitely beat this guy. Probably.
Don't worry, Torrent. Fortune is on his side.
Come on, Lone Star. You're ridiculous.
We found him here, after all. One of his kind is sure to seek the Elden Ring. Even if it does violate the Golden Order.
So, also start to notice when we're in places like caves, or if there's water around, or things of that nature, where we seem to be underground, this is the realm of the unconscious. So, this is why Melina is able to find you here, because we are kind of within this area of the psyche where she is kind of roaming, where the self is roaming. And just in that picture before of... Just bring it back up. In this picture, the self, the ego self access, where the self and the ego are together, and then they become completely detached from one another. This is why Melina is so confused about where she is, what she's supposed to be doing. You know, she only knows that she's supposed to get back to the Erd Tree, and that is them coming back together, the self and the ego coming back together. It's just it's like her innate natural draw to reassimilate everything back into one whole unified being. And as we progress further and further, and she gets closer and closer, she starts to remember more. She starts to understand that the world is in bad shape, and that things are in need of desperate repair, and all of this stuff. So just something to keep in mind as we further talk about Melina. Yep. Dude, this guy looks like he just walked over from Yarnum. Like, straight up. Just beat the shit out of the moon presence, and here we come. And notice just the stark contrast between the cave that we came from and like the golden rays of the lands between, specifically here where we're at, and how fucking gigantic the Erd Tree looks relative to everything else. Like, this gives us a really good narrative as to just how overgrown and godlike the ego has become.
Oh, yes. Tarnished, are we? Come to the lands between for Elden Ring? Of course you have. No shame in it. Unfortunately for you, however, you are maidenless. Without
Because you
guidance,
killed her.
without the strength of runes, and without an invitation to the round table hold, you are fated, it seems, to die in obscurity. Luckily for you, however, there is one shining ray of hope for even the maidenless. Me. Vare. Take care to listen. Are you familiar with grace? The golden light that gives life to you, tarnished. You may also behold its golden rays, pointing in a particular direction at times. That is the guidance of grace, a path that a tarnished must travel. Indeed. Grace's guidance holds the answers. It will lead you, tarnished, to the path you are meant to follow, even if it leads you to your grave. Grace's guide to Castle Storm, the home of the decrepit demigod Godric the Drafted.
Okay. So the process of individuation is called uniting the opposites and making the unconscious conscious, bringing light and awareness to the places in your psyche that you have repressed, that you've neglected, that you are ashamed of, all this different type of stuff. And the guidance of grace and us igniting the lost, the lost sights of grace, is doing just that. We are re-illuminating these different aspects of America's psyche, and basically, like, we're turning the lights back on. Sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down. Oh, gotcha.
Tarnished. I can see
And this process of individuation, of self-reflection, this inward journey, from the outside, think of like a monk that is meditating. From the outside, it looks like absolutely nothing is happening. But on the inside, this storm is taking place. This battle is occurring.
Goodbye. Nice to
Astrology. During the age of the Erdtree, Karian astrology withered on the vine. The fate once writ in the night skies had been fettered by the Golden Order. And then, on top of these two processes, you know, alchemically and psychologically being individuation and the magnum opus as being making the conscious unconscious and uniting the opposites, it's also about making the macrocosm and the microcosm united. So whenever you're looking, whenever something says the night sky or the stars or anything like that, it is directly referring to something that is happening internally. Very, very sneaky. Very, very sneaky. Ow. Ow. What the? That again in America's sharing the body makes this more complicated. Makes what more complicated? Oh. Oop.
Greetings, traveler from beyond the fog. I am Melina. I offer you an accord. Have you heard of the Finger Maidens? They serve the Two Fingers, offering guidance and aid to the tarnished. But you, I am afraid, are maidenless. I can play the role of maiden, turning runes into strength to aid you in your search for the Elden Ring. You need only take me with you to the foot of the Erd Tree. Then it's settled. Summon me by grace to turn runes into strength. Ah, another matter. I bequeath to you this ring. Use it to traverse great distances. It will summon a spectral steed named Torrent. Torrent has chosen you. Treat him with respect.
So what we see in Melina, her physical attributes are exactly what we see in the real world, right? Like, she is a microcosm of the lands between, where it's only the golden illuminated parts of the society of the lands between are being shown. They've locked away everything else that they deem unacceptable, which is why only her golden eye is showing, right? Like, the other part, the other half of her is being repressed and is locked away. Like they share a mind, and the mind is a world, both of them. So, I get confused on what Radagon represents. So just as as Melina represents an aspect or a concept within Marika's psyche, so too does Radagon. So Marika is the singular subject, but that singular subject is broken down into parts. So Marika, think of it as like a car engine. Marika is the engine in the totality. Melina is the transmission, and Radagon is the pistons, or whatever, however you want to think about it. But like, they are just elements that make up the totality, which is Marika's psyche. So, although yes, Radagon is a part of Marika and is influencing the decisions that she is making, like, Marika is ultimately the god and is ultimately in charge because it's her domain, it's her psyche. Memory of Grace, it is merely a cycle. Stand before the Elden Ring, become the Elden Lord. So this, again, just like as we talked about earlier with the magnum opus and with individuation, this process of, death and rebirth of yourself, of the stone, to make it galvanized and that much stronger, it happens over and over and over and over again. Like, we're never a finished product. And that is what this is saying, is that you just keep doing the same thing. You just keep on going. keep making yourself better. Keep working on your shit. Ooh, Carl's gonna get you. Kaboosh! What? Wonder if we're gonna be able to see it here. Probably not because the dark. Let's see if we can see. Oh, not that. Can you guys see that? Or is it too dark? Curious to see if you guys can make that out or not. I see a rope. Can you see like the really worn out like illustration that's actually like carved into the hearse? Can you see that? It's a king. It's you can see his crown and his beard and like one arm showing he's standing like in a profile way. And then over here it seems like the queen, and then below her is like a child kneeling. It's hard to see, but if you look at it in your own game, you could probably see it better than on stream. But this motif is on every single hearse. And it's the same family that we see in the statues in Fair Missoula. A bathrobe over a shiny globe thing. Close. Close. Hup. You can't see it there. There you go. You can see it way better there. should go do that really quick. The next lore video I'm working on is about nighttime in Elden Ring, and why certain strange events occur and what they mean in relation to, you know, psychology. And the reason that like Miyazaki and FromSoft decided to put the day-night cycle in there anyways, and why it's an important narrative feature of the game, is because like just like how you and I, we have a wake-sleep, you know, cycle, so too does America. And when she's awake, right, it's like just straight consciousness. It's all about like the Erd tree and the sun and the golden rays and all this stuff. And then when she sleeps, she's dreaming. And the dream world is like this fissure between the consciousness, or the realm of consciousness and the realm of the unconscious, where your kind of shadow leaks out of you and makes itself known. And we see that because everything that happens at night is directly associated with death. Knights Cavalry, they ride funeral steeds. Death birds are all about death rituals, all that kind of stuff. The bell-bearing hunters are all about killing. And it all happens kind of in the shroud of night. And dreams are the way for the unconscious to kind of make its way to your awareness if you keep repressing it. And the reason that the lands between is now kind of wrought with you can, in the same kind of field, you can have a very normal like deer or bunny, and then you have these like bat creatures, is again because this consciousness and unconsciousness are bleeding into one another. Because just like what we see in Castle Morn, where the Misbegottens are overthrowing and killing all of the soldiers, that is the inner war happening inside of America's mind. Ow. Nope. No. Nope. No, thank you. Get him. Ah. Oh, this is just fucking annoying. the lands between is literally, it is starting to be this area, this realm where the conscious and unconscious are no longer separated.
Oi! You there? Would you go and do that? Oh, yes. I remember. Some clod turned me into... You were just breaking... Thank you. I was pushed out of the cave. And I ended up as a tree. Lucky you came along. Oh, when they threw me out the cave, they took everything I owned. So this is all I have to express my thanks. I hope you can forgive me.
It's a lot of mushrooms, dude.
Or if you can afford
Going for a
to
little
wait
trip?
a while, I could sneak back in. Then I'd be of some... Right. I'll need a moment. I'm frightened of them. My knees start knocking. Just thinking about...
Whoop. Whoa. Nice dodge. Ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. This probably ain't gonna go too well. Oh, what the fuck? Where'd you come from? Holy shit. Let's see here. Let's make the run, I guess. Oh, Jesus. Whoop. So the symbol that we see here is the crucible symbol. And at the beginning, we talked about how the crucible is the self, right? Psychologically speaking, it is, and the self is the philosopher's stone. It's like our inner God. It's the end goal that we're trying to get back to. It's the beginning point and the end point of the process, and the fact that this pathway is basically the yellow brick road to the Erdtree and to this to our destination, to our fate, is what Jung called the path to the self, the pathway to the self. And these symbols of the Elden Ring, Jung would call them mandalas, which he described as different symbols that kind of encompass your inner world within a given time. If you're interested in that, just go look it up. But it's a really big kind of understanding of the symbols of the Elden Ring and what they mean. The current Elden Ring, we see, like in this one, all four of them are very much in harmony, right? It's very united, it's very balanced, it's very very much in wholeness. And you see with the current iteration, with like the Golden Order, it's one is like separated at the top, which again is what we see with the ego self axis and how those two things split and they become off balance, and we see that off balance way of thinking and psyche in the lands between, and this path being symbolized throughout the whole lands between to the different areas that we need to go to, and ultimately to like the Forge of the Giants, right, is a really, really, really cool way to show that end game. So whenever we see this symbol, the symbol of the crucible, it's Melina. It's Melina showing us where we need to go, how we need to get there, the path that we need to follow. Everything else is kind of like a side quest, if you will. I need to change those because I... Oh. Oh.
This tiny golden aura is the grace of the Erdtree. This light once shone in the eyes of your tarnished brethren, but now it is all that guides you. Also, I hear. You can see them, can't you? The rays of grace that guide you through your burden. Upon the cliff in Castle Stormvale is a shard bearer.
Okay, I got to go, but I will continue this walkthrough, and thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like this, subscribe if you haven't, and check out one of my lore videos if you guys like this content. Thanks so much for the support. Much love.